Welcome to GovCast, connecting with federal IT's top decision makers. I'm your host, Amy Kluber. We often hear how fast the private industry operates when it comes to technology, and how government always wants a piece of that pie. Reggie Cummings, Executive Director of Infrastructure Operations at the Department of Veterans Affairs, has had a long tenure in the private sector. Being a veteran himself, and working with his father, also a veteran, to navigate VA benefits, Reggie has a personally driven mission to ensure his office operates with a guiding North Star for the legacy he wants to leave behind. Because IT infrastructure is so behind the scenes and often discussed very technically, Reggie provides a look at how his initiatives are contributing to the ultimate goal of serving our nation's veterans. In a way, we all depend on these efforts to support the veterans who touch our lives every day, whether it's a father, aunt, friend, or even yourself. Peeling back the layers of what makes these services can help all of us understand what technology really means in the grand scheme of federal IT modernization. Well, Reggie, welcome to GovCast. It's so great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time and opportunity.
So start us off with what you do at VA and what exactly are you responsible for there?
So my role at the VA is essentially overall responsibility for the delivery of core infrastructure services. And in doing that, I also, set the overall strategic direction for a very diverse set of technologies, if you will. So I have over 3,000, team members to help me do that. But the core services, just, to kind of give a sense of what that is really around the enterprise network, the data centers to include our cloud environments, servers and storage, cyber security operations management, also includes platform services, enterprise platform services, as well as internetworking services. So that's things such as Active Directory, middleware, certification or certificate management, as well as our identity and access management environment. So all those fall within my scope of responsibilities.
And certainly not small things. Those are pretty large backbones for the agency, especially for technology.
Yeah. It is. It's pretty central to almost everything that happens at the VA. And while I am humbled, by the span and the scope that we have, I also feel it. And so it's just very rare that something happens that I don't have to perk my ears up and pay attention to, because there's a high probability that my team's involved in some way, shape, or form.
So what exactly brought you to VA?
For me, it was more of a natural inclination. As a veteran myself of the Air Force, I felt a kinship, to the VA post-service, time. While I was in the service, I didn't think anything about the VA, quite honestly. I didn't know, what it meant. I certainly didn't have, the sense of the overall mission, because, I guess I still felt, and in some ways still feel, like I'm not really a veteran, but the reality is, I am. I think of folks like my father, as a veteran, right? That, World War II, Vietnam War, those kinds of things. I didn't equate myself in that way. And so I didn't think a whole lot about the mission while I was in service. But it was in, working with my dad. He was a huge VA consumer. And, as he kind of got up in years and as he transitioned out and passed, there was just a lot of things that I was doing with him. And then subsequently after he passed with the VA that made me realize that it's a pretty central service and mission. And so I got to that place in my former private sector life that I, had an opportunity to, to think about some things in terms of moving on, what I want my next, I guess, chapter to look like. And, I could have stayed with that organization, but, I was like, what, if, here's the time for me to really reflect and see where I can make a difference. And quite honestly, the reason why that was something that was a thought of mine was because I had in the back of my mind all the things that I was going through and working through with my dad. And I just wanted to, make myself available. And it just so happened at that time of inflection that the VA had an opportunity that would work for me or could work for me. And so VA was the only place other than the organization that I was with, which was Hilton Worldwide, that I was interested in. It was going to be, stay with Hilton for the rest of my professional life, or, take the opportunity to, help and give back, if you will, with the VA.
Certainly very mission driven. I mean, we hear that all the time in government, serving the mission and, serving in public service. But at VA, it's a little bit different because it touches so many people, and all of us have veterans that we know or we're close to. And the fact that you kind of have that dual mission to improve lives like those of your dad or someone else's dad or even yourself, it's pretty impactful.
Yeah, it is. And now, my daughter, she's an Air Force officer. So, it just, and I'm able to kind of give her, some guidance and advice on things that she needs to be thinking about that I know that she's not thinking about right now. Because when I was in those shoes, I wasn't thinking about those things. So it's really, to your point, the degrees of separation are very, very small in terms of the, who you're touching and who you're impacting. So the mission is, it stands on its own. One of the things that I did not realize at the time, and again, it's just because I just, didn't really think a whole lot about it. But, the things that happen in the VA, I mean, the overall mission, the services, all the things that are delivered. I mean, the reality is this is, the equivalent of maybe 4 industries mashed into one organization, 4, Fortune 500 type of, companies mashed into one organization. So it's pretty humbling, and I'm happy that I made that choice and it worked out to where I could join and do my part.
That's an interesting statement. The 4 industries mashed into one. Can you go explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So, probably the biggest and probably the least that I, really, paid attention to, if you will, is clearly the hospital or the health, portion of it. You can equate that to, in terms of its size and scope to maybe the next largest might be Kaiser, right? Kaiser Permanente, right? And they're focused, on health, right? So we have this big block of services, around health within the VA. But, not too far back from that is the whole benefits, area. And benefits, range from home loan, home guarantee type of activities to truly, retirement and other, types of benefits associated with service connected injuries and all that. So truly benefit and benefit analysis to insurance, right? To, memorial services. It's just all these things are combined under one roof. And that is, at the end of the day, from a platform perspective, from what we do, what my team is responsible for, network is a network is a network. But to know and to appreciate the nuances that are at a memorial site versus the nuances that may be at a benefits regional office to what is needed at an actual VA medical center is the key, right? And so your delivery of services has to be agile enough to take in consideration all of those entities. But the reality is that they're all under one roof. So
what does it really mean when you take into account, obviously the overall mission and then all those facets of what makes VA VA? What does it really mean to provide that structure for the networks and the cybersecurity? And what does that enable at the agency?
So, at the end of the day, I think if I'm looking at what my team provides and how I show up, every day, it's all foundational, right? It starts with that first experience, let's just say for the new care provider coming on, ensuring that they have, a as low touch and as seamless of an onboarding experience, if you will, to make sure that they, have, it's called, kind of that first day capability in the private sector world. I think on the public sector side, the adoption is a little bit slower for a number of reasons. But obviously, first day capabilities, being productive that first day is an objective and a goal. Well, my team's, kind of responsibility relative to that is to ensure that that onboarding technology, that onboarding, services that we affect, are available and are considerate of the dynamics that come into play with getting someone badged, if you will. And then once they're on board and they're badged and they're working, clearly ensuring that, we're maintaining, optimal networking services so that that experience that they have isn't, or that service or care that they're providing, isn't hampered because the proverbial plumbing isn't working. So it's foundational. And that's why, earlier when I was mentioning that there's not a day that goes by where something doesn't happen where I feel, I need to pay attention because, there's always going to be, a tie-in to that infrastructure fabric that, my team and I are responsible for. So, we enable those providers. We enable those business units to do the things and provide and deliver the services to veterans and their families. So, while we don't always have a direct service offering, to the veteran, we're right there with the caregiver.
Right. And those foundations are, of course, almost just as important to even make that happen, especially considering, VA's digital modernization and all the efforts that are underway now and into the future. You mentioned your time in the private industry. Is there anything from that time that overlaps a little bit at VA or something that you would like to bring to VA that you think is missing?
I was at Hilton Worldwide for just under 17 years. The path that we were on at Hilton, like a lot of other organizations, we were on that precipice of, establishing a DevOps organization and truly doing things to value map our IT services and capabilities to those business outcomes, if you will. And so we were very progressive and, obviously, that's a tight market out there for a lot of companies. And so, it's a matter of, failing fast, getting in there and making that difference and, enabling the business. When I got to a place, a natural pivot point at Hilton, and it seems like that pivot point that enabled me to then, avail myself to the VA. I came in and there was things that, we probably had just did, let's call it, if a maturity level scale is, 1 is you're just getting started, 2 through 5 is varying degrees of success and ability. We were probably at for some things like our DevOps maturity, we were probably sitting at about a 3 at Hilton when I pivoted. Coming to the VA, it was at level 1. So there were a lot of things that we were still working through and iterating at Hilton that was top and fresh of mind for me coming into the VA. So it almost felt like, it wasn't necessarily a, starting over point. It was more of a, let me scrub in and lend some, some advice, guidance, or what have you. Or in some cases, raise my hand to lead some things. One of those things was, establishing our service management function, which now, years later, I'm very happy with how things are progressing there, that, we have a, kind of a single taxonomy associated with how we think about our overall, service management capability and the tool platforms that we're using, to deliver against those processes, if you will. Well, we here at the VA have ServiceNow as the foundational technology used for delivering, those service management functions. As I transitioned from Hilton, that's exactly what we were using and doing. And again, we were iterating as in my role there, we were iterating to probably, again, a third level of maturity. So, again, that was just top of mind and just very timely, if you will, for me to walk in and to see that, we were on the precipice of going down that path at the VA. So it felt like I didn't miss a beat. I mean, there were some things that, like I said, I provided counsel and some vision around, but by and large, it wasn't like I had to go and sell the idea. So it was really, great to kind of see the thought processes that were there that, could leverage the things that, I was, right in the middle of at Hilton. So
Well, there's definitely always plenty of opportunities where government can leverage industry or even, be inspired by private industry, considering how quick they move on things. So I understand you are also currently working on the VA's version of Platform One. Is that right?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that one is also kind of a labor of love, right? So one of the things that I was focused on at Hilton was, again, the whole DevOps evolution. And VA Platform One is essentially the embodiment of that in terms of a product, right? DevOps is a framework, but at the end of the day, you have to have something, tangible to enable to deliver those capabilities. And so, yeah, that was one of those things that, for me to start the drumbeat, I did the marketing, got my team, kind of assembled to get out there and do the market research that was needed. I didn't want to, be too pejorative over the solution and how we went there. So it was very, good and helpful that the Air Force was already, had already gone down that path. So we engaged with them, early on in our journey here, just to kind of see the, not necessarily the tools, but certainly the marketing and the campaigning, if you will, that they had to kind of put together to get adopters. At Hilton, it was a bit easier because, we had the value proposition. We did a lot of value mapping on the front end. And so there was only one, solution. There was only one place that everyone, had to focus on. And so in a lot of ways, we had built in adoption, if you will, where here at the VA, probably very much like it was for the Air Force, you kind of have to get it out there, build it up, if you will, and then get, those tracer bullets, if you will, to kind of, start to utilize the environment. And so I feel really good about where we're headed with that. And the longevity of this initiative is, to me, is very material, right? It really does create a North Star moment for OI&T and prevents us from having to, do a lot of independent builds, if you will, for this. This creates an enterprise platform that, teams that don't have the wherewithal or teams that don't, know exactly how to build an automated environment that where they can deploy, their application, can consume and scale their environment to meet the demands or meet the performance associated with usage of their application without having to put a ticket in or without having to, go back and do some, project management. This is material for that. And it furthered from just a personal perspective drives one of the things that, I thought was, very important, which is, get the applications, get the business out of liberate them from the notion of we need to host this in the cloud or we need to host this at a data center. This removes that conversation and gets us to some objective, what are the requirements? Because now you have a platform that utilizes both the cloud and the data centers, the legacy data centers, based on performance and capacity, not necessarily on just what you desire, if you will. So leaving and putting that type of stamp on our hosting modernization roadmap, which is tied to our digital roadmap, is huge to me.
Yeah, it sounds huge. Are you learning anything from the Air Force on this?
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was kind of driving at. The whole premise was, how do you get adoption, right? I think that as they started their journey or as they worked through their journey with DoD, it became, probably clear to them that they needed to show the value proposition, of this. And to be the one thing that we learned was, you have to have, options, if you will. So it just can't be, and this is kind of what I talk with my team all the time on. We have to have roadmaps that gives options, for folks. It's one thing for us to say that we provide this service and thou shalt use it. It's another thing for us to say, we provide this service and we have these options available to you, right? So that gives them some ability to choose the things that they need or the things that they would prefer without necessarily saying you have to, code and deliver to this one, capability. So, it created in my mind a thing for us to recognize that we do have to continue to evolve and continue to sell this service as if it's, truly a service that they select and opt into as opposed to one that they have to do, even though ultimately, they'd have to make some decisions if they chose not to use one of the services that we're providing. They have to come up with that business justification. But the Air Force model really helped to solidify the fact that we needed to have options as opposed to just one way to, service up the that delivery service.
Absolutely. So looking back over your, past 4 years at VA, how far has VA come in its IT modernization journey? I mean, you've talked already about some pretty prominent projects going on, but how do you see it in the past and where do you see it going?
Yeah. Coming in, like I said, I had a lot of hope, and a lot of those have come to fruition. One of the things that I think is probably most significant to me is our growth, in the cloud space. We traveled from, a cloud first model, which, created, I think, a lot of turmoil for some parts of the organization. Over time, we've rationalized that to, thankfully, the cloud smart federal position came out. And so we were able to pivot to more of that selective adoption, if you will, which then led to, my ability to bring that team directly in alignment with the broader infrastructure team and focus so that we can not only just have a cloud smart kind of approach, but also, an overall, data center modernization and optimization effort, if you will. When I look at what we've done with our overall ability to meet and drive our services based on business demand, we've grown from, more of a waterfall mentality overall to an agile approach to almost everything that we're doing, whether that's, delivering applications and capabilities to how we're turning out and delivering things on the infrastructure side. It's an agile kind of backdrop, whereas before it was pretty much waterfall, big bang kind of thing. So you could just see how, or I could see, how the evolution over a very small period of time was starting to take shape. And the fact that we also, adopted a product line framework really helped to help us focus on what I'll consider delivery and grouping of, common services, common capabilities, under one umbrella. And that in my mind, being able to bucket things in that way really helps to drive a narrative and to, put us more in line with business outcomes.
It's certainly come a long way. And it seems like there are so many things you're working on that are only going to contribute to that digital future. And especially considering the emerging technologies, that have promise in federal IT right now. What lasting impacts do you hope to leave at VA, well into the future?
Yeah. So, I can say it. I came to the VA to, in a lot of ways, in a very philosophical manner, to do my part and to serve, if you will. Part of that is more than just, answering the mail, if you will, and, checking a box. It truly is, leaving things better than I, received them. And in a lot of ways, working myself, out of roles. I feel like, if I'm not, focused on those kind of longer lasting effects, then I'm really not doing a service, So my focus has always been, on, planting seeds, and whether I'm there to, see the fruits of that labor or to see that flower bloom or not is really, it's not a motivator for me. It's just knowing that is going to be, a nice tree once it's grown. So one area that I feel very good about was kind of establishing a managed service mentality. It was a lot like we had on the private sector side. I brought a lot of those concepts to the table, got a lot of naysays initially, but over time and me kind of learning how to, what words I needed to use, what word is more impactful, in a certain form, that was my maturation into the VA. So as I started to learn that, I could see that the mentality and the need, was there. And so I feel pretty good about, kind of getting that level of focus in place, even though, I passed that on to some other teams and moved on to the infrastructure side that managed service mentality has stuck. And I think that that's going to, pay dividends to future leaders in that application space, if you will. I think about, again, how I mentioned, our cloud strategy and pivoting as we pivoted to that cloud smart adoption, which enabled me to then, work towards bringing the core infrastructure and the cloud elements together under a bimodal delivery culture. So, that is going to have longer lasting effects. I'm very happy with where we are now, what our trajectory is. And I think that the sky is the limit, for IT relative to that. And then probably, as I, kind of mentioned before, with getting the hosting modernization strategy in place, and then ultimately getting the actual platform up and running and getting those adopters, on there, liberating the IT leadership from having to worry about or think about, whether something should go into the cloud or whether something, should be at the data center, I think is pivotal. It puts us in a position to where we can just truly focus on requirements, on performance, on outcomes, not on the technology itself. So I'm feeling pretty good about the future and how things will prevail over time.
That's fantastic. Well, Reggie, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts and projects and kind of giving us a look into what's going on at VA digital-wise and tech-wise. I'm really looking forward to seeing all the fruits of your labor, as you mentioned.
Yeah, same here. I'm a fan as well as a participant, so I feel very fortunate right now.
Great.
I appreciate the time, Amy.
Thank you. GovCast is a production of Government CIO Media and Research. For more podcasts, head to our website. And please, if you liked what you heard, let us know by leaving us a review in iTunes. We continue to strive to help you connect with federal IT's top decision makers. Thanks for listening.